Harvard's first black president was just ousted by a billionaire and a far-right conservative activist who used the New York Times and Congress to do their bidding as part of their mission to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs around the country. This is Bill Ackman. He is a billionaire and hedge fund manager who is a Harvard alum. After October 7th, a group of Harvard students wrote a letter condemning Israel's role in the violence. And Bill Ackman went ballistic. He insisted that all of their names be released publicly so that he and all of his rich buddies could make sure to never hire them by accident. After his demands to dox teenagers went unanswered, he wrote a 6-page letter to Claudine Gay. In this letter, he accuses the school's diversity, equity, and inclusion program of not being inclusive to Jews and starts to blame the diversity, equity, and inclusion program on why there's rising anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus, even though in that letter he notes that his daughter, who graduated from Harvard in 2020, said that she personally never experienced any anti-Semitism on campus at all. So then when his 6-page letter goes unanswered, because again, remember, this is just a random alumni who doesn't even have any kids at the school. He's just a billionaire who is used to getting whatever he wants. So when his 6-page letter goes unanswered, he starts relentlessly tweeting, and he brings to the attention of Elise Stefanik, who is also a deranged Harvard alum. And she decides to lead a congressional hearing on the topic of anti-Semitism at Ivy League schools. This is why we don't have healthcare or a social safety net, because Congress is more concerned with what happens on Harvard's campuses than what happens to the rest of the entire country. This hearing was literally unhinged. It was basically just a space for Republicans to air all their grievances against the liberal elite and the lack of diversity of thought and cancel culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because at one point we get this question from Burgess Owens. If in case we discover that there is a direct link between diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory to the growth of these Marxist interest groups like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and the pro-Hamas groups on campus, would you then end the DEI initiatives on your campus? That question is obviously laughable, but it's really important because it is exactly what conservative activist Chris Rufo said his plan was. He said conservatives need to create a strong association between Hamas, BLM, DSA, and academic decolonization in the public mind. Connect the dots, then attack, delegitimize, and discredit. Make the center-left disavow them. So already, his plan is in motion in Congress. Then comes in the New York Times. Because after the hearing, conservative activists decide to do a deep dive on Claudine Gay's 1997 dissertation and accuse her of plagiarism, which gets plastered all over the New York Times front page for like 2 weeks. Even though Harvard does an entire internal investigation and finds there was no misconduct, just a couple improper citations, again from 1997. But why is this important? Because again, it is exactly what Christopher Rufo said his plan was. We launched the Claudine Gay plagiarism story from the right. The next step is to smuggle it into the media apparatus of the left, legitimizing the narrative to the center-left actors who have the power to topple her, then squeeze. It's also important to note that people like Bill Ackman and Chris Rufo and Elise Stefanik are accusing Claudine Gay of only having gotten her position because of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Which obviously we know that's not true. They're just saying that because she's a black woman. But it's important again because what is Chris Rufo's plan for 2024? 50% net reduction of DEI jobs in corporate America, put the entire industry into chaos. So Chris Rufo now has Bill Ackman, Billionaire, the New York Times, and Congress doing his bidding, which is to essentially get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, aka people of color in leadership positions in corporate America. And the center left is not only allowing this to happen, they are actively participating in it. Also, I think it's important to note that Claudine Gay was not pro-Palestine. She said from the river to the sea was personally abhorrent to her. She allowed a black student to be evicted from campus for trying to de-escalate a protest situation. And still, they came for her. And they will continue to. Because your accomplishments and your assimilation to their power structure aren't enough. They won't stop until it is only white men in power again.